My name is Perry Johnson, a 32-year-old software engineer from Boston. After my dad died 5 years ago, my relationship with my family crumbled into almost nothing. I thought spending $5,000 on a lavish lakeside reunion might reconnect us. When I arrived at the empty venue, confusion turned to shock as my phone rang. It was my mother laughing. "The reunion was yesterday, Perry. We'll bring you leftovers." I said nothing that day. But by morning, the police were speaking for me. Before I tell you how I turned an empty reunion into justice, let me know where you're watching from in the comments and hit that subscribe button to join me for more stories of family betrayal and redemption. I grew up in a modest neighborhood in Springfield, Massachusetts, where our family seemed normal enough from the outside. Our two-story colonial house, with its small but well-kept yard, looked like every other home on the block. My childhood photos show smiling faces at birthday parties and holiday gatherings, but the reality behind those smiles was much more complicated. My father, Thomas Johnson, worked as an electrical engineer. He was a quiet, patient man who spoke with his actions more than his words. He coached my Little League team, helped with science projects, and never missed a school event. When I struggled with math in 4th grade, he sat with me every evening until concepts clicked. Dad was my buffer, my protector, the person who made me feel seen in our household. My mother, Linda, was another story entirely. A high school English teacher, she approached parenting with the same critical eye she used on student essays. Nothing was ever quite good enough. If I brought home a grade of 96, she'd ask about the missing 4 points. When I won 2nd place in the science fair, she wondered aloud why I couldn't have taken 1st. Her words always carried a sting delivered with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. I was the second of 4 children, and my position in the family hierarchy was clearly defined. My older brother Maxwell, 2 years, my senior, was undeniably our mother's favorite. A natural athlete and social butterfly, he excelled at everything without seeming to try. Mom proudly displayed his trophies and newspaper clippings, bragging about him to neighbors and family friends. Maxwell knew his position and exploited it, often manipulating situations to make himself look better at my expense. My younger sister, Rachel, 3 years younger than me, was the family peacekeeper. Sensitive to the emotional currents running through our home, she learned early to smile and agree with whatever Mom said. She became skilled at redirecting conversations when tensions rose, sacrificing her own opinions to maintain harmony. I always sensed she knew the dynamics were unhealthy, but survival in our household meant keeping the peace. Ryan, the baby of the family, and 5 years my junior, took a different approach. He became the troublemaker, the rebel who acted out to get attention. His report cards were filled with comments about disrupting class, his weekends with detentions. While Mom criticized his behavior, she always gave him the attention he craved, even if negative. Their relationship was a continual cycle of misbehavior, punishment, and reconciliation that somehow worked for both of them. And then there was me, Perry, the forgotten middle child, neither troublesome enough to demand attention nor exceptional enough to earn automatic praise. I learned early that, in our family, you were either a star or a supporting character. So I poured myself into academics, finding refuge in books and computers where effort reliably translated to results. I built my first computer at 11, coded my first program at 13, and graduated high school as valedictorian. Yet my achievements always seemed to fade into the background of family discussions. Another computer thing, Perry. That's nice. Did you hear Maxwell got scouted by a college baseball team? Mom would say, changing the subject before I could explain my latest project. Dad would later find me in my room, quietly congratulate me, and ask for a demonstration. Those moments sustained me. When I received a full scholarship to MIT for computer science, Dad drove me to campus himself. He helped arrange my dorm room, shook my hand, then pulled me into a rare hug. "I always knew you were brilliant," he whispered. "Show them what you can do." When we called Mom that evening to say I was settled in, she mentioned she was busy organizing Maxwell's graduation party and would talk later. She never called back. College became my sanctuary. Surrounded by people who valued intelligence and innovation, I thrived. My social awkwardness gradually gave way to confidence as I found friends who shared my interests. I interned at tech companies during summers rather than returning home, calling Dad regularly, but limiting interactions with the rest of the family to holiday visits that grew shorter each year. By graduation, I had multiple job offers. I chose a startup in Boston, partly for the opportunity and partly for the distance from Springfield. Dad attended my graduation alone, explaining that Mom had a school commitment and my siblings were busy. I pretended not to mind, but we both knew the truth. The gap between me and the rest of the family was widening, and neither side seemed motivated to bridge it. For the next several years, my contact with family dwindled to occasional text messages and brief phone calls with Dad. He would visit me in Boston a few times a year, and we'd spend weekends exploring the city talking about everything and nothing. Those visits became my only real connection to family life. Mom would sometimes join these calls to offer unsolicited advice about my career or dating life, but her interest felt performative rather than genuine. Then came the call that changed everything. 5 years ago, on a rainy Tuesday evening, Rachel called to tell me Dad had suffered a massive heart attack. By the time I reached the hospital, he was gone. Just like that, my anchor, my advocate, the one person who truly saw me, had disappeared from my life. The funeral was a blur of black clothes and casseroles. I stood beside my family receiving condolences from people whose names I barely remembered, feeling like an outsider at my own father's memorial. Mom organized everything with her usual efficiency, leaving no space for others' input or grief styles. When I suggested including Dad's favorite Beatles song in the service, she dismissed it as inappropriate without explanation. After the funeral, I tried to connect with my siblings, thinking shared grief might bridge our differences. Maxwell was too busy managing Mom's emotions to have a real conversation. Rachel gave me sympathetic looks, but followed Mom's lead in all things. Ryan was visibly drunk at the reception, creating a scene that diverted everyone's attention. My attempts at meaningful connection fell flat, and I returned to Boston, feeling more alone than ever. 5 years passed with minimal contact. Christmas and Thanksgiving text messages, perfunctory birthday calls, an occasional family update email from Rachel. The silence wasn't hostile. It was worse than that. It was indifferent. Without Dad to maintain the connection, the thin threads binding us had simply unraveled, revealing there might not have been much holding us together in the first place. While my family relationships withered, my professional life flourished. The startup where I began my career was acquired by a larger tech company, providing me with both financial security and professional recognition. My coding skills and problem-solving abilities earned me rapid promotions. By 30, I was leading a team of developers at one of Boston's most prestigious tech firms, working on innovative projects that pushed the boundaries of what software could accomplish. My apartment in downtown Boston reflected my success. Modern furniture, the latest gadgets, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. From the outside, my life looked perfect. Professional achievements, financial stability, a stylish home in an enviable location. Yet, despite all the external markers of success, a persistent emptiness followed me. Material comfort couldn't fill the void where family connections should have been. Dating proved challenging. Relationships would begin promisingly, but falter once they reached a certain depth. Women would comment that I kept them at arm's length, that I never fully let them in. One particularly insightful girlfriend, Amanda, broke things off after 8 months with uncomfortable clarity. "It's like you're playing a role, Perry," she said over our final dinner together. "You're performing attentive boyfriend perfectly, but I never feel like I'm getting the real you. There's this wall, and I don't think you even know how to take it down anymore." Her words stayed with me, echoing in the quiet of my apartment on lonely evenings. I began to recognize patterns in my behavior, how I would deflect personal questions with humor, how I could discuss intellectual topics for hours, but freeze when conversations turned emotional, how I maintained strict boundaries around my dumplings, time and space. After months of private reflection, I finally made an appointment with a therapist. Dr. Sarah Bennett, a calm woman with kind eyes and direct questions, helped me connect the dots between my childhood experiences and adult patterns. Our weekly sessions became an anchor in my life, a space where I could tentatively explore the emotional terrain I'd avoided for so long. "Your mother's conditional approval taught you that love must be earned through achievement," Dr. Bennett observed during one particularly insightful session. "And since no achievement was ever quite enough for her, you learned that opening yourself to others means risking inevitable disappointment." Over months of therapy, we explored how my family dynamics had shaped my worldview. How Maxwell's favored status taught me that love was a competition with clear winners and losers. How Rachel's people-pleasing showed me that authenticity must sometimes be sacrificed for acceptance. How Ryan's rebellion demonstrated that negative attention was better than being overlooked. Your father was your secure attachment, Dr. Bennett explained. When you lost him, you lost your model for healthy love and your proof that you were worthy of being seen and valued. As winter turned to spring in my second year of therapy, Dr. Bennett suggested something that made my stomach tighten with anxiety. Have you considered attempting reconciliation with your family? The question hung in the air between us. My immediate instinct was to dismiss the idea. Why revisit relationships that had caused so much pain? Why risk rejection from people who had shown so little interest in my life? I'm not suggesting you need their approval, she clarified, reading my expression. But healing often involves facing the source of our wounds. Whatever the outcome, the attempt itself can be empowering. The idea took root despite my resistance. What if I could rewrite the narrative of my family relationship? What if, as an adult with resources and boundaries, I could establish new, healthier connections with my mother and siblings? What if the void I'd been carrying could actually be filled? For weeks I considered options. A series of one-on-one meetings felt too intense. A group dinner too brief and superficial. Eventually, the idea of a family reunion emerged. A weekend retreat where we could reconnect in a neutral, pleasant environment with activities and space to create new memories. I researched locations, eventually finding a beautiful lakeside resort in the Berkshires, 3 hours from Boston and 90 minutes from Springfield. With 6 cabins surrounding a main lodge, it offered the perfect balance of togetherness and privacy. The property featured hiking trails, a pristine lake for swimming and fishing, and a restaurant known for exceptional farm-to-table cuisine. It wasn't cheap. $5,000 for the weekend, including accommodations, meals, and activities. But I could afford it, and I wanted to remove any financial barriers to attendance. Planning the reunion became a project that energized me. I created detailed itineraries with options for group activities and free time. I arranged for a professional photographer to capture what I hoped would be the beginning of a new chapter in our family story. I even consulted with the resort's chef to include dishes from our childhood family gatherings. Mom's favorite lemon meringue pie, the barbecue ribs Dad made every 4th of July. Each week in therapy, I processed my hopes and fears about the reunion. Dr. Bennett helped me establish realistic expectations and prepare for potential disappointments. Remember, you can't control how they respond, she cautioned. Focus on your own intentions and boundaries. What do you hope to gain from this experience regardless of their reactions? I sent formal invitations 8 weeks in advance, following up with texts to confirm everyone received them. To my surprise and cautious delight, the responses were positive. Mom replied almost immediately with, "Looking forward to it." Maxwell mentioned bringing his new girlfriend. Rachel seemed genuinely excited, sending me links to articles about family healing. Even Ryan responded affirmatively, though, with his typical brevity, "I'll be there." Over the next weeks, I sent several group texts confirming details and finalizing plans. Saturday, June 12th. Check-in starts at 2 p.m. I reminded them a month before. Looking forward to seeing everyone. Marked on my calendar, Rachel replied with a smiley face emoji. Got it from Maxwell. Sure from Ryan. Mom added, I've already started shopping for the weekend. As the date approached, my anticipation grew. In our final therapy session before the reunion, Dr. Bennett and I worked through potential scenarios and emotional responses. Whatever happens, she said, as our time ended, remember that you've already shown tremendous courage in extending this invitation. That growth belongs to you regardless of the outcome. The night before the reunion, I packed my bag with carefully selected clothes, the gifts I'd bought for everyone, and a journal. Dr. Bennett had suggested I keep throughout the weekend. I set my alarm for 7 a.m., planning to hit the road by 8 to arrive well before the family. As the reunion organizer, I wanted to be there to welcome everyone, to set the tone for a weekend of new beginnings. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks, filled with hope that the empty space inside me might finally begin to heal. The morning of the reunion dawned clear and bright, as if the universe approved of my reconciliation plans. I loaded my car with my weekend bag and the carefully wrapped gifts: a vintage baseball card for Maxwell, a first edition of Rachel's favorite childhood book, a premium guitar accessory kit for Ryan, and for Mom, a delicate silver bracelet with 4 small birthstones representing her children. The drive to the Berkshires filled me with a nervous excitement I hadn't felt in years. 6 hours alone in the car gave me time to rehearse conversations and imagine scenarios. Maybe Maxwell and I could reconnect over hiking. Perhaps Rachel would open up about her life during a quiet moment by the lake. Ryan might be more receptive to brotherhood without Mom's complicated influence. And possibly, just possibly, Mom herself might see me with new eyes. Not as the overlooked middle child, but as the successful man who wanted to heal our family. I stopped once for coffee, declining food despite hunger. Butterflies had taken residence in my stomach, leaving little room for anything else. The GPS guided me off the highway, onto increasingly scenic roads, through small towns with historic buildings, and past rolling hills dotted with farms. When I turned onto the gravel drive leading to Cedar Lake Resort, my hands were actually trembling on the steering wheel. The property was even more beautiful than the website photos had promised. A central lodge built of golden wood and natural stone sat on a slight rise overlooking a crystal-clear lake. 6 smaller cabins formed a loose semicircle around it, connected by stone pathways lined with wildflowers. Mountains rose in the distance, their reflection shimmering on the water's surface. It was perfect, serene, yet lively, private, yet open, exactly the setting I'd envisioned for our family's new beginning. My first indication that something was wrong came when I pulled into the nearly empty parking area. Only 3 cars occupied spaces, likely belonging to staff, I reasoned. It was just after 2 p.m., exactly when check-in began. I'd expected at least some family members to have arrived, particularly Mom, who prided herself on punctuality. Perhaps they hit traffic, I murmured to myself as I grabbed my bag and headed toward the main lodge. Or they're coordinating to arrive together. The main hall of the lodge was beautifully decorated with fresh flowers and rustic elegance. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, while the opposite side featured floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. A long dining table had been set for dinner, complete with candles and place cards with our names. Everything was ready, except there was no sign of my family. Mr. Johnson. A smiling woman approached from behind a reception desk. I'm Diane, the resort manager. Welcome to Cedar Lake. We're all set for your family gathering. Thank you, I replied, glancing toward the door. I'm a bit early, it seems. The rest of my family should be arriving soon. Diane's smile faltered slightly. Oh, I see. Well, your cabin is ready whenever you'd like to settle in. It's lakeside too, with the best view of the water, and dinner will be served at 6 as requested. I thanked her and decided to wait in the main lodge for a while, sending a quick group text, I've arrived at the resort. It's beautiful. Looking forward to seeing everyone soon. No immediate responses came through. After 30 minutes of waiting, I decided to check my family's exact arrival times. Scrolling through our text conversation, I confirmed what I already knew. Check-in at 2 p.m. Today, Saturday, June 12th. Everyone had acknowledged these details multiple times. Another half hour passed. The butterflies in my stomach had transformed into a heaviness. I approached Diane again, trying to keep my voice casual. Has anyone called about arriving late? The Johnson family? Her expression changed in a way that made my chest tighten. Mr. Johnson, I'm not sure how to tell you this, but there was a Johnson family gathering here, yesterday. The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. Yesterday? That's not possible. Our reservation is for today. Diane tapped at her computer, then turned the screen so I could see it. The reservation was indeed for this weekend. But your family arrived yesterday morning. They said there had been a change of plans, and everyone could only make it on Friday. Since we had availability, we accommodated the change. They checked out this morning. I stared at the screen, unable to process what I was seeing. There it was, my reservation, my credit card charge, but with a note about the date change, as requested by the family. There must be some mistake, I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. I never requested a date change. I organized this entire reunion. Diane's discomfort was palpable. The woman who spoke with us identified herself as Linda Johnson. She said she was coordinating with you. We assumed. Linda Johnson. My mother. The room seemed to shrink around me as the implications sank in. This wasn't a miscommunication. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and tried calling my mother. No answer. Maxwell. Straight to voicemail. Rachel. No response. Ryan. Nothing. Mr. Johnson. Would you like to sit down? Can I bring you some water? Diane's voice penetrated the fog surrounding me. I must have nodded because moments later, I was seated by the fireplace with a glass of ice water in my hand. The beautiful room that had represented such hope now felt like an elaborate stage for my humiliation. For the next 2 hours, I alternated between calling family members and sitting in stunned silence. No one answered. Texts went unread. The truth was becoming undeniable, yet my mind refused to fully accept it. Finally, at 4:37 p.m., my phone rang. Mom's name appeared on the screen. I answered immediately, my heart pounding. "Hello, Perry," she said, her voice casual, as if we'd spoken yesterday. "Mom, where is everyone? I'm at the resort for the reunion." My voice was steady despite the storm inside me. "Oh," that she replied, and the slight amusement in her tone sent ice through my veins. "The reunion was yesterday, Perry. We couldn't all make Saturday work, so we came on Friday instead. But I organized this. I paid for it." We confirmed Saturday multiple times. The confusion in my voice was giving way to something else. That's when I heard it. Her laugh. Not a full laugh, but a chuckle, dismissive and cold. In the background I could hear other voices, the murmur of conversation, someone else laughing. "Well, you know how these things go. Plans change. We tried to reach you." A lie so blatant it didn't deserve acknowledgement. It was a lovely time, though. The resort was beautiful. Good choice. I couldn't speak. The pain expanding in my chest was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. "Don't worry," she continued, filling my silence. "We'll bring you leftovers. Rachel saved some of that lemon pie you ordered." More background laughter, louder this time. I recognized Maxwell's distinctive laugh among them. "You know, Perry," my mother continued, her voice taking on the lecturing tone I remembered from childhood. "This is what happens when you disconnect from family for years and then try to control everything. Family gatherings need flexibility." The shock was wearing off, revealing a clarity I'd never experienced before. This wasn't a miscommunication. This wasn't thoughtlessness. This was calculated cruelty. "Did everyone come?" I asked, my voice now eerily calm. "Oh yes, full house. Maxwell brought his girlfriend. You'll like her, very accomplished. Rachel's kids are getting so big." Ryan behaved himself for once. "Even your Aunt Susan and Uncle Robert drove down from Vermont. Everyone asked about you, of course." Every word was another twist of the knife. They had all known. They had all participated. "I see" was all I could manage. "Don't sound so gloomy," Mom chided. "It's not like you would have said much anyway. You always were the quiet one." I ended the call, without another word, placing the phone carefully on the table beside me, as if it might shatter, or perhaps as if I might shatter if I moved too quickly. The beautiful lodge, the pristine lake, the carefully planned activities, all of it now seemed to mock me. I sat alone in the empty venue I had paid for, surrounded by decorations for a reunion that had already happened without me. As evening shadows lengthened across the lake, reality fully descended upon me. The resort staff moved quietly around the edges of my awareness, their sympathetic glances adding another layer to my humiliation. Diane had discreetly informed the kitchen that the dinner would be for 1 instead of 8. The place settings had been cleared away, leaving a single place at the enormous table. "Mr. Johnson," Diane approached cautiously, "dinner can be served whenever you're ready. Or, we could bring it to your cabin, if you'd prefer privacy." The kindness in her voice nearly undid me. "The cabin, please," I managed to respond. In the solitude of Lakeside 2, I finally allowed myself to examine what had happened. My first instinct was to doubt my own memory. Had I somehow miscommunicated? Had there been an email or text I'd missed? I scrolled through months of communications, finding multiple confirmations of Saturday, June 12th. The most recent was just 3 days ago when I'd sent final details about arrival times. All had been acknowledged. All had been confirmed. There was no mistake. With a growing sense of dread, I opened social media, platforms I rarely used, but where my family maintained active presences. There it was posted 14 hours earlier on Rachel's Instagram, a smiling family group on the very deck visible from my cabin window. My mother Maxwell with his arm around a slender brunette Rachel, with her husband and children, Ryan looking surprisingly put together. The caption read, "Perfect day for a Johnson family reunion. Missing you, Dad." No mention of missing me. I scrolled through more photos, each one a fresh wound. Maxwell giving a toast glass raised caption, "To family, the complete package." My mother cutting the special cake I had ordered, decorated with Johnson Family Reunion 2021. Ryan and Maxwell fishing off the dock, where I had planned for us to watch the sunset together. Rachel's children playing the lawn games I had arranged. The final blow came from my mother's Facebook page, a group shot with extended family members. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in years. People I had specifically not invited to allow our immediate family more intimate time to reconnect. Yet there they all were enjoying the weekend I had planned, and paid for smiling in the venue I had selected. All of them conspicuously present while I was conspicuously absent. The realization hit me with physical force. This wasn't just my immediate family excluding me. They had replaced me with extended family. They had taken my carefully planned reunion and transformed it into a different event entirely. One where my absence was not only acceptable, but perhaps preferable. A knock at the door interrupted my spiral. A server from the lodge delivered a covered dinner tray with a bottle of wine. "Compliments of the management," he said quietly, before retreating. I couldn't eat. The food, dishes I had specifically selected to evoke happy family memories, now seemed to taunt me. I poured a glass of wine with shaking hands and returned to my grim social media exploration. A notification appeared. A new voicemail from Maxwell. Hope flared briefly before I played the message. "Hey, little brother," his voice echoed with the slight slur that indicated he'd been drinking. "Sorry you couldn't make it to your own reunion." Laughter. "Mom said you sounded confused." Classic Perry, always in your own world. "The girlfriend was asking about you. Told her you're the family genius, who can't remember what day at Island." More laughter than muffled voices, as if he was talking to someone else. "Anyway, we've got leftovers if you want them. Though you might want to check the expiration date." The message ended with another burst of laughter. Minutes later, a text from Rachel. "Sorry you couldn't make it yesterday. Kids were asking about Uncle Perry. Maybe next time, the place was gorgeous. By the way, good choice. Sorry I couldn't make it." As if I had been the one who changed plans. As if I had been the one who chose not to attend. The careful compartmentalization I had maintained my entire adult life began to crack. All the pain I had bundled away and stored, the childhood slights, the teenage exclusions, the adult indifferences, came rushing forth like water through a broken dam. I had spent 32 years telling myself that my family's treatment of me was normal, that I was oversensitive, that I expected too much. Now confronted with evidence of deliberate cruelty, those rationalizations crumbled. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't thoughtlessness. This was intentional humiliation. Memories I had suppressed for years resurfaced with new clarity. Maxwell accidentally destroying my science fair project the night before judging. Rachel forgetting to deliver my invitation to a neighbor's party, where everyone else from our class attended. Ryan borrowing and losing the rare comic book Dad had given me for my birthday. My mother scheduling my college campus tour on the same day as an important family event, then acting disappointed when I chose the tour. None of these were innocent mistakes. They formed a pattern I had refused to see. The physical symptoms of emotional distress overwhelmed me. My chest constricted until breathing became difficult. My stomach churned with nausea. A pounding headache formed behind my eyes. I found myself on the floor back against the bed, knees pulled to my chest like a child seeking comfort that wouldn't come. For hours I remained there cycling through emotions. Shock gave way to hurt, hurt to anger, anger to a deep, aching grief. Not just for this weekend, but for the family relationship I had never truly had. The family I had spent years convincing myself might still be possible. My phone continued to periodically light up with notifications. Another text from Rachel with photos of her children at the lake. A message from Ryan saying simply LOL, forgot the date. A group text from my mother to everyone except me discussing plans to meet for brunch the next day to finish off the reunion weekend. Each notification was another confirmation that this hadn't been an unfortunate mistake, but a coordinated exclusion. They weren't even attempting to hide it from me anymore. Around 3 a.m., exhausted but unable to sleep, I received one final message from my mother Perry. You need to learn to take a joke. This sulking is exactly why family gatherings are so difficult with you. Call when you've gotten over yourself. Something inside me shifted in that moment. The hurt receded, replaced by a cold clarity I had never experienced before. This wasn't about me getting over myself. This was about them facing consequences for perhaps the first time in our relationship. As dawn broke over the lake, I watched the sunrise from my cabin porch. A strange calmness, having replaced the emotional storm of the night. The beauty of the setting now seemed fitting for a different reason, not as the backdrop for a family reconciliation, but as the place where I finally saw the truth without filters or wishful thinking. My family had shown me exactly who they were and how they valued me. Now, it was time to show them exactly who I had become. As the early morning sun reflected off the lake, my professional instincts took over. In my career, I approached problems methodically, to identify the issue, gather information, analyze options, implement solutions. Personal problems could be addressed the same way. The issue was clear: my family had deliberately humiliated me and felt entitled to do so without consequences. Now I needed information. I checked out of the resort, thanking Diane for her kindness, while declining her offer of a partial refund. The reservation was used as intended, I told her, just not by me. During the drive back to Boston, I made a hands-free call to Dr. Bennett, briefly explaining what had happened and requesting an emergency session that afternoon. Her calm voice provided an anchor, as she assured me she would rearrange her schedule. At home, I immediately went to my office, the one room in my apartment that always provided clarity and focus. My family had taken advantage of my desire for reconciliation, but they had forgotten something crucial. I had resources and skills they did not. As a software engineer, I knew how to find information. As a team leader, I knew how to execute a plan. I started with my mother. After my father's death, she had been in charge of distributing his life insurance money, a substantial sum that was supposed to be divided equally among all 4 children. I had received my portion, but had never asked about the details of the estate. Now I did. Using legal databases I had access to through work, I discovered something interesting. My father's policy had paid out $500,000. Divided 4 ways, each of us should have received $125,000. I had received $75,000, with Mom explaining that medical and funeral expenses had reduced the total. Now I found records of Mom taking out a home equity loan 6 months after Dad's death, unusual given that the insurance should have covered any immediate expenses. Further digging revealed that Maxwell had purchased a vacation property around the same time, with a down payment that closely matched what appeared to be missing from my portion of the inheritance. A property he could not have afforded on his middle management salary. Moving on to Maxwell himself, I recalled rumors of financial improprieties at his company. As a software security specialist, I knew how to access publicly available corporate information without crossing legal boundaries. Within hours, I had documentation suggesting Maxwell had been manipulating expense reports for years, charging personal travel as business expenses, and creating fictional client meetings to justify reimbursements. Rachel's financial situation proved equally illuminating. After her divorce 3 years earlier, she had been ordered to pay alimony to her ex-husband, who had put his career on hold to care for their children. Tax records indicated she had been significantly underreporting her income from her interior design business, likely to reduce these payments. Ryan's situation required the least investigation. A simple background check revealed he had violated his parole from a previous DUI by crossing state lines without permission last month. The timing coincided with a concert he had posted about attending on social media. By evening, I had compiled a folder of documentation for each family member. Nothing I had uncovered required illegal hacking or privacy violations, just methodical research using publicly available information and resources I legitimately had access to. The kind of information that relevant authorities would be very interested to review. During my session with Dr. Bennett, I calmly explained what I had discovered and what I planned to do with the information. "Perry," she said carefully, "I understand you're hurt, and rightfully so. But revenge rarely provides the satisfaction we hope for. Have you considered simply cutting contact instead?" "This isn't about revenge," I explained. "It's about accountability. They deliberately hurt me because they believed there would be no consequences. They've always believed that." "And you're sure this is the healthiest response?" she pressed. "For you, not for them." I considered her question seriously. Yes. Doing nothing would mean carrying this pain forward. Confronting them directly would lead to denial and gaslighting, as it always has. This way there are natural consequences for their actions, and I can move forward knowing I didn't allow myself to be a victim. Dr. Bennett didn't entirely approve, but she acknowledged my reasoning. "Just be careful not to become what you're fighting against," she cautioned. "There's a fine line between justice and cruelty." Her words stayed with me as I moved forward with my plan. I wasn't interested in cruelty, only in consequences proportionate to actions. The next morning, I began making calls. First to a trusted lawyer explaining the situation with my father's life insurance and requesting advice on how to formally report potential fraud. Then to the corporate compliance hotline at Maxwell's company, providing specific dates and details of his expense manipulation without identifying myself as his brother. For Rachel, an anonymous tip to the tax authority about potential income underreporting. For Ryan, a simple email to his parole officer with screenshots of the out-of-state concert attendance. Throughout this process, I maintained complete silence toward my family. Their messages had evolved from mocking to confused to increasingly irritated at my lack of response. "Perry, your silence is childish. Call your mother." "Bro, seriously, it was just a joke. Why so serious?" "Perry, Mom's getting worried. At least let us know you're okay." I saved each message, but replied to none. My silence was not emotional withdrawal. It was strategic patience. 3 days after the reunion, the first consequence landed. Maxwell called in a panic, having been summoned to a meeting with corporate audit and HR. They're reviewing all my expense reports. Someone reported me. I need a lawyer. I listened calmly, offering neither assistance nor criticism, then ended the call with a simple, "I'm sure you'll handle it." 2 days later, Rachel called in tears. "The IRS is auditing me. They're saying I underreported income. This could affect my alimony situation. I don't know what to do." Again, I listened, without offering help, concluding with, "That sounds challenging. Good luck with it." Ryan's parole violation resulted in an immediate 72-hour hold while authorities determined whether to revoke his parole entirely. His one allowed call was to me, not our mother. "Perry, they picked me up for going to that concert in New York. Someone must have ratted me out. Can you bail me out? Mom's not answering." "No, Ryan, I can't," I replied evenly. Actions have consequences. A week after the reunion, the final piece fell into place. My mother called, her voice lacking its usual imperial confidence. "Perry, something strange is happening. The insurance company is investigating how I distributed your father's policy. They're saying there might have been irregularities. I need you to tell them you received your full share." "Did I receive my full share, Mom?" I asked quietly. Her momentary silence told me everything. "Don't be difficult, Perry. Family matters should stay private. We can discuss adjustments if you feel you were shortchanged, but involving authorities is extreme." "Is it extreme? Like changing a family reunion date without telling the person who organized and paid for it?" Another silence, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice had a new note, something approaching fear. "What have you done, Perry?" "Nothing," I replied truthfully. "I simply stopped preventing consequences from finding their natural targets." After hanging up, I recorded her voicemail and added it to my documentation folder. My family had spent years taking advantage of my desire for their approval and my reluctance to create conflict. They had never imagined I might stop protecting them from the results of their own actions. In the days that followed, my phone exploded with messages, accusations, pleas, threats, and finally desperate attempts at reconciliation. I responded to none. My silence was not a punishment. It was a boundary. I had nothing to say to people who had seen my vulnerability as an opportunity for cruelty. Instead, I focused on moving forward. I changed my phone number, sharing it only with essential contacts. I spoke with my lawyer about legally recovering the missing portion of my inheritance, approaching it as a business matter rather than a family drama. I continued my therapy sessions, working through the complex emotions of finally standing up for myself after years of accommodation. 2 weeks after the reunion, that never was, I sat in a police station providing formal statements about the life insurance distribution. The detective taking my statement looked at me with curiosity. Most people don't report family members, he observed, especially over financial matters. I met his gaze steadily. This isn't about money. It's about truth. Some things can't be left uncorrected. As I left the station, I felt neither triumph nor regret, only the quiet certainty that for the first time in my life, I had refused to participate in my own diminishment. The police were now speaking for me, giving voice to boundaries I should have established long ago. The weeks following my report to the police developed with a momentum all their own. My mother received a formal notice that she was under investigation for insurance fraud and misappropriation of funds. The evidence I had provided, combined with the documentation from the insurance company, painted a clear picture of deliberate financial misconduct. Maxwell's situation deteriorated rapidly. What began as an expense report investigation expanded when auditors discovered irregularities in client billing that had benefited him personally. His company placed him on administrative leave, pending a full investigation, and whispers of criminal charges began to circulate. Rachel's tax audit revealed 3 years of significant underreporting, resulting in substantial penalties and interest. More damaging was the impact on her divorce agreement. Her ex-husband's lawyer immediately filed for adjustment of the alimony payments based on her actual income, with claims for back payments and legal fees. Ryan's parole violation earned him 6 months back in county jail. Without our mother's immediate intervention, she was too preoccupied with her own legal troubles. He had no one to post bail or hire a quality lawyer. The public defender assigned to his case bluntly told him that given his prior record, the violation was sufficient for the maximum penalty. Throughout this period, my phone buzzed constantly with notifications until I finally changed my number. My mother's messages evolved from commanding to pleading. "Perry, you need to call me immediately," became Perry, "Please, I don't understand why you're doing this," and finally, "Perry, I'm begging you, help me fix this." Maxwell's tone shifted from mocking to threatening to desperate. "Very funny," turning the tables on us, transformed to, "You'll regret making this personal," before landing at Perry. "I could lose everything. Please talk to me." Rachel, always the emotional barometer of the family, sent tearful voice messages. "Perry, the kids are asking what's happening. Please don't let our issues affect them." Her appeals to family loyalty might have moved me once, but the memory of those social media posts from the reunion, the celebration of my exclusion, hardened my resolve. Extended family members began reaching out, some condemning me for betraying family, others quietly expressing support. "Your father would be ashamed," wrote my Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister. "You don't air family laundry in public." In contrast, my father's brother, Uncle Michael, sent a brief message that brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "Tom always said you were the one with true integrity." I see he was right. I maintained my silence not out of cruelty, but because there was simply nothing left to say. Any explanation would be twisted, any justification dismissed. My family had spent years selectively listening to me. Now they could experience what it felt like to not be heard at all. 3 weeks after changing my number, I received an email from a cousin. I had always been fond of Jessica, who had attended the rescheduled reunion. Her message provided unexpected clarity about what had actually happened that weekend. "Perry, I've been trying to reach you. I wanted you to know that many of us had no idea what was going on. Your mom told everyone you had canceled the reunion, but gave permission for it to happen anyway. She said you were too busy with work to attend, but wanted the family to enjoy what you had planned. It was only during the second day that Maxwell made some jokes about you, not knowing when your own event was happening. It felt wrong, but I didn't understand until now. I'm sorry for being part of something that hurt you. Her honesty was refreshing, and I thanked her for reaching out. Her message confirmed what I had suspected. My immediate family hadn't just excluded me. They had constructed an entire narrative to cover their actions, while simultaneously mocking me behind my back. As summer progressed, the legal consequences for my family members developed like dominoes falling in sequence. My mother was formally charged with insurance fraud, facing potential jail time and substantial fines. The investigation revealed she had diverted not just my portion of the inheritance, but had taken smaller amounts from Rachel and Ryan as well, counting on their financial disorganization to hide the discrepancies. Maxwell lost his job and was facing criminal charges for expense fraud and potential tax evasion. His girlfriend broke off their relationship when his financial future became uncertain. Rachel was struggling with tax penalties and increased alimony payments that forced her to downsize her home. Ryan remained in jail, his previous support system disrupted by the family chaos. I observed these developments not with satisfaction, but with a strange sense of detachment. These were not punishments I had created, but the natural results of years of actions finally catching up to their source. My only role had been to stop running interference between my family and accountability. Friends and colleagues noticed changes in me during this period. "You seem different," my team lead commented during a project review. "More decisive somehow." My neighbor, who had become a friend over morning coffee at the local cafe, noted, "You're standing straighter. Sounds odd, but it's like you're physically taking up more space." Dr. Bennett observed these changes too. "You're no longer trying to make yourself smaller to accommodate others' expectations," she said during one of our sessions. "That's significant progress." The first holiday season after the reunion arrived with a flurry of legal proceedings still underway. For the first time in my adult life, I made no attempt to connect with family for Thanksgiving or Christmas. Instead, I accepted an invitation from a college friend to join his family for Thanksgiving and organized a Christmas skiing trip with colleagues. These gatherings lacked the complex history of family holidays, but they also lacked the undercurrent of tension and hierarchy that had defined family events. I found myself laughing more freely, speaking more openly, and connecting more genuinely than I could remember doing at any family gathering. During this period, I made one significant gesture that felt like both closure and a new beginning. Using the money recovered from my father's insurance policy, I established a scholarship fund in his name at the local community college, where he had taken night classes to earn his engineering degree. The Thomas Johnson Memorial Scholarship would support students pursuing technical education who demonstrated the qualities my father had valued: persistence, integrity, and kindness. The day the scholarship was announced, I visited my father's grave for the first time since the funeral. Standing before the simple granite marker, I found myself speaking aloud. "I think you would understand, Dad. Not the hurt or the aftermath, but the need to finally stand up and be counted. You always taught me that respect is earned through actions, not demanded through relationship. I'm trying to live by that now." As I placed a small stone on top of the marker, a tradition my father had explained to me during a cemetery visit in my childhood, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for years. Whatever happened with my family moving forward, I had honored my father's memory by refusing to accept dishonesty and cruelty as the price of belonging. 7 months after the reunion, that never was my mother called from a number I didn't recognize. I almost declined the call, but something prompted me to answer. "Perry," she said, her voice smaller than I had ever heard it. "The sentencing is tomorrow. I wanted to talk to you before whatever happens next." I remained silent, waiting. "I know sorry doesn't begin to cover it," she continued after a moment. "What we did was cruel. What I've done over the years was worse. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. Too late, but I understand." After a long pause, I finally spoke. "I hope you find peace, Mom. I really do." It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was the most honest sentiment I could offer. As I ended the call, I realized that for the first time in my life, I had spoken to my mother without seeking her approval or fearing her judgment. It was in its way the most authentic interaction we had ever had. One year after the empty reunion, I stood on the deck of a small fishing cabin in Maine, watching the sunrise over a lake that had been my father's favorite retreat. He had brought me here twice during my childhood, just the two of us teaching me to fish and build campfires and identify constellations in the night sky. Those rare moments of undivided attention had sustained me through years of feeling overlooked. The cabin was simple, a far cry from the luxury resort where my family saga had culminated, but it held an authenticity that expensive accommodations couldn't match. I had rented it for a week of solitude to mark the anniversary and reflect on the dramatic changes of the past year. My mother had received a suspended sentence and probation due to her age and lack of prior record, but the financial penalties had forced her to sell the family home. She was now living in a small apartment, her social standing in the community diminished by the public nature of the case. We had spoken twice more since her sentencing, brief, cautious conversations that acknowledged the past without attempting to erase it. Maxwell had not fared as well. The corporate fraud investigation had uncovered years of systematic deception, resulting in an 18-month prison sentence he was currently serving. His carefully constructed image had crumbled, leaving behind the reality of a man who had believed rules applied to others, but not to himself. Rachel had managed to stabilize her situation, working out a payment plan for her tax penalties and renegotiating her alimony arrangements. Of all my siblings, she had made the most genuine attempts at reconciliation, sending thoughtful emails, acknowledging her role in family dynamics without making excuses. We had met for coffee twice, awkward encounters that nevertheless held seeds of possible future connection. Ryan had been released after 4 months due to good behavior and prison overcrowding. The experience seemed to have sobered him literally and figuratively. He had enrolled in community college classes and found work at a local garage, small steps toward stability he had never managed before. We had exchanged brief text messages, neither friendly nor hostile, simply acknowledging each other's existence. Extended family relationships had sorted themselves into those worth preserving and those best left behind. Uncle Michael had become something of a surrogate father figure. Our monthly phone calls, a connection to my father's values and perspective. Cousin Jessica and I had discovered a surprising kinship, meeting occasionally for lunch and honest conversations about family history. Others had drifted away, uncomfortable with the truth that had been exposed or unwilling to relate to me outside the familiar family hierarchy. I found I didn't miss them. The space they had occupied was gradually filling with more authentic connections. My professional life continued to flourish with a recent promotion to development director that recognized both my technical skills and newly emerging leadership abilities. Colleagues who had once seen me as brilliant but reserved now described me as both competent and approachable. The wall that had separated my professional and personal selves had begun to dissolve, allowing me to bring my whole self to both realms. Dr. Bennett and I had reduced our sessions to monthly check-ins, focusing now on building healthy relationships rather than healing past wounds. "You've done the hard work of confronting your history," she told me during our last session. "Now comes the equally important work of creating your future." That future had begun to include dating again, this time with a new openness and vulnerability. I had been seeing Allison, a wildlife biologist I met through a mutual friend, for 3 months. Our relationship was developing slowly, deliberately, with an honesty about expectations and boundaries that would have been impossible for me a year earlier. As I watched the morning mist rise from the lake, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought me to this moment of peace. The empty reunion hall that had symbolized rejection and humiliation had ultimately become the catalyst for a profound liberation. By showing me exactly who they were, my family had finally released me from the exhausting work of trying to be who they wanted. The greatest lesson of the past year wasn't about revenge or justice, though both had played their parts. It was about the quiet power of refusing to participate in my own diminishment. For years I had accepted the role assigned to me. Overlooked middle child, family afterthought, convenient target, believing that belonging required compliance. The empty reunion hall had finally shown me the truth. I had been fighting for acceptance from people incapable of seeing my worth. True family, I had discovered, wasn't defined by shared DNA, but by mutual respect and genuine care. My father had understood this, showing his love through consistent presence and support rather than manipulation and control. The family I was building now, A patchwork of biological relatives who had earned their place friends, who had become as close as siblings, and new relationships built on honesty, honored his example far more than maintaining toxic connections ever could. As the sun cleared, the tree line casting golden light across the rippling water, I felt a sense of gratitude that would have seemed impossible in the depths of last year's pain. Not gratitude for the hurt itself, but for the clarity it had eventually provided. Sometimes the most valuable gift is seeing things as they truly are, even when that vision comes at considerable cost. I had arrived at an empty reunion hall and discovered that the emptiness wasn't a lack but an opportunity, space to build, something new, something true, something worthy of the person I had become. The family that had rejected me had inadvertently set me free. So what about you? Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between toxic family connections and your own well-being? Have you found yourself standing alone, only to discover that alone doesn't have to mean lonely? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more insights into family dynamics and personal growth. Remember, sometimes the most important family is the one we choose for ourselves. Thank you for listening to my journey, and may you find the courage to honor your own worth even when others cannot see it.